Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. To celebrate my channel passing the 2,000 subscriber mark, I've decided to show you a scenario that some of you may not have ever seen or even heard of before. WG4, The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun, for AD&D 1st edition by TSR. Okay, first a bit of history. Released in 1982, The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun is a 32-page softback scenario that follows on from an incident in the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, whereupon the players follow a band of marauding Norkers from the caverns, though it can easily be played as a standalone scenario or as a part of an existing campaign. It is designed for characters of levels 5 to 10. Right, to the cover. This is a piece by artist Karen Nelson that seems to divide people. I happen to love it, as it shows an aspect of the chain god Tharizdun in purple, black, yellow and green, with a lavender background that I find weirdly disturbing and definitely appropriate for what lies within. Additionally, the back cover has a picture of a grell that I think is really good. Okay, to the inside. There will be spoilers from this point on, so stop watching now if you intend to play this. The cover contains a wilderness map of the region showing the various places of interest that are detailed within. We also have a second internal cover that is an aerial view of the temple, as well as maps for all of the internal levels, and on the back a map of an orc's lair that they can encounter. Finally, we have the scenario itself. The cover of the scenario has a picture of these odd, almost clansman-looking cultists, and then we move on to the introduction. We're told that the temple was built in a previous age as a secret place for worship of Tharizdun, the evil god of eternal darkness, entropy, insanity, malign knowledge and cold. It drew the worst of the world to it, and the cult flourished for generations, sending out evil into the world. Supposedly, a great battle occurred between Tharizdun and those whom opposed him, and though they were unable to destroy him, he was imprisoned somewhere by some means nobody has discovered, thus disappearing from all of the planes and has not been heard from since. His servants returned to the temple after a while, though Tharizdun didn't manifest there anymore, and amongst them were powerful magic users and priests who sought to determine what had become of their foul patron in order to free him. All attempts failed, though their divinations told them that something called the Black Cyst existed below the temple. Over time they managed to find the Black Cyst, though they were disheartened by what they found, a hemisphere of levitating black needle rock inside which a huge form can be seen enveloped in purple vapours, though whether this is the physical manifestation of Tharizdun nobody could determine. No spell, magic or ritual could penetrate it. The Seekers, over time, ritualised their attempts to determine if it was their imprisoned master. The methods of survival in the chamber of the Black Cyst were ritualised into worship of Tharizdun, and as the ages passed the ritual became stale and meaningless. Tharizdun's clerics abandoned him and began to steal hordes of gems sacrificed by previous servants, 333 gems of incredible value, that being between 5 to 50,000 gold pieces each, replacing them with lesser valued jewels. In the end, only a handful of the most faithful remained to repeat the ritual of awakening. Some were slain by monsters, others succumbed to old age. The last high priest wandered into the crypts below the Undertemple to meet his fate, and so it was over a century ago that the last servants of Tharizdun died. Over the years, various wandering monsters have used the temple as a lair. Some eventually moved on, others descended into the depths of the place, others were slain. The temple was forgotten by all but a few learned sages and savants, and its purpose has been lost to time itself, truly becoming the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. Next, it moves on to the background. It discusses the tie-in with the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth and the adventurers finding a sheltered valley populated by gnomes, Gnome Vale. Taking advantage of their hospitality, the players enjoy their time with them, and they have a feast in Granite Hall at the behest of their leader, Laird Gwalar, who puts on quite a spread in their honour. He does, however, use this as an opportunity to ask for their aid, as Norkers keep on invading their lands, causing them losses before fleeing howling back to the west. He tells them that ogres, trolls and even a pair of hill giants have been involved in recent times, and he wants them to investigate that which is sending them to do these foul deeds. What has actually happened is that around 2 years ago a mountain giant called Grug discovered the temple that was populated by a band of Norkers. The giant enlisted these creatures as servants, which they took to with aplomb, seeing the benefits of having a mountain giant master. The giant has, with the help of the Norkers, been summoning monsters to join him there, and it now hosts a community and stronghold for them. The Norkers do occasionally raid Gnome Vale, with some of the larger monsters accompanying them, though Grug rarely ventures out anymore as he has no need to and has turned his attention to the dungeon he has found underneath the temple. We then move on to the notes for the DM. The object of their quest, though they wouldn't necessarily know it, is the temple, where they will have to force entry to explore it. It covers the advantage of having a ranger in the party, though gnomish guides will help them if need be, as well as the magical assistance they're furnished with, which includes a selection of magic items and scrolls. Up to 13 gnomes will be sent with them, depending on how weak they are. It covers the food and water requirements and availability and the rules for starvation. It details 13 areas of the mountain map that the players are safe in and then goes on to discuss the party requirements. It has been designed for 4 to 8 characters of levels 8 to 10 or 12 player characters of lower levels than that, and then covers the amount of movement they can accomplish in a day full of travelling. It gives a paragraph to read to the players to kick them off and then goes into the scenario itself. The first thing it details is the wilderness and all of the random encounters that the players could potentially expect. It has things like avalanches, bears and giants, as well as a band of Norkers, wolves and even trolls. It then details the encounter areas that are numbered on the map. Aside from some grassy, rocky and woody valleys, we have some other areas of interest. There's the plateau of the Arakocra, where a small tribe of the Birdmen dwell. If the party are friendly with them, they ask the players to help them defeat some griffins that are making their life difficult and gift them with some gems if they manage to take care of them. It details a safe valley, the Valley of the Lucrota, which contains an encounter with a Lamia, and the Gorge of the Orcs of the Rotting Eye tribe, which is mapped out on one of the cover inserts. All of the different soldiers and commanders are listed and the Orc tactics are detailed. Then, at last, we come to the focus of the scenario, the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun itself. We have an overhead map which shows some of the topography of the place. It has narrow tracks that pass through a ravine with cliff-like edges leading to a walled ramp to the entrance. Other ramps lead up to the roof. The roof is made from slabs of black rock that, if carefully examined, reveal glyphs that send curses to the bringers of light and those responsible for wrapping blackness in everlasting chains. It makes a point that there are absolutely no windows in the temple and no light penetrate it, and all of the stone is, unless otherwise noted, a dull black. It also mentions that there are always sentries watching the approach, and if the party slays them and then retreats, there'll be more there when they return until the force of resident monsters is wiped out. Additionally, there are no wandering monsters in the temple. It notes that every week reinforcements arrive to join Groog's forces as listed here. It then goes into the defence of the upper level, stating that it should be relatively easy for the party to capture it as it's just Norka guards. However, help will be sent to reinforce them from below if required. Once the inhabitants of the temple understand what they are up against, they will organise to defeat the attackers, with the likes of oil and acid being used if required, as well as boulders rolled from ramp floor areas, which it gives the rules for. It even gives notes on slipping and falling for this. It does stress that although the defence is chaotic, they can organise into something fairly well coordinated, as they're fighting for their lives and homes, and will fight to the last, seeing any sign of quarter being given as weakness. It even goes into a fairly self-important superior dungeon mastering section, where it details the need to be completely familiar with the temple and its inhabitants in order to run it correctly. We then move on to the temple itself, beginning with the upper level. It goes into fairly copious notes on the tactics that the guards will use, with great detail being paid to the how and when. It lists the positioning of the guards and Norkers, and it's definitely a glimpse into Gary Gygax's wargaming background we are seeing here, as everything is statted out including reinforcements, and even the last-ditch actions they will take. The rest of this level is fairly littered and lived in, with rubbish, crates, barrels and filth being the norm, though they can find a ridiculously well-hidden Qual's feather token if they search the down stuffing of a particular pillow. It then moves to the lower area. It's all pretty dungeon crawly, with the temple taking on some of the character of the original inhabitants, with polished obsidian walls and the colour purple playing a particularly prominent role. There's a large antechamber that contains some hill giants and a mauve chamber of polished stone with pyramids carved onto the floor that has a nest of trolls in residence. Looking up here reveals that there are patterns of figures and tentacles interlocked together, but it's so intricate that it's difficult to identify. Further on, we come to an incredibly well-hidden secret door that leads to an inset area that contains the first clues as to what was going on here, with 3 strange hooded robes of deep purple, 2 iron theorables and an iron box, all unrusted. The robes have black cord belts, and the arms have sleeves so long that they would hang at least a foot beyond the arms of even a long-armed person. The hoods are long and pointed and decorated with inverted 2-tiered black pyramids, and they have narrow slanting eye holes. The box can only be opened by saying Tharizdun or by magic, and contain within it 18 small black globes of incense to be burned in the theorables with no light, smoke or heat. The effect of these can only be seen in the black cyst. More on that later. Also in this area is a strange iron horn, the Wailer of Tharizdun. It has a horrible deep tone if blown, which seems to make the walls shake and activates magic in the black cyst. There are also 4 iron torch holder-like things with cone-shaped depressions on the top, and there's another box. Again, this can only be opened by special means and contains 24 cones of dull black material. If lit in one of the iron holders, it will give off a pale cold radiance shedding faint light. As before, this will change in the black cyst. Eventually, we lead to a shaft leading down. There are 333 heavy brass rungs that go down 333 feet to the under-temple. This is the only entrance. They can also encounter some Norkers and 2 Anis who are serving as cooks and maids for Grug. In the refectory of the temple, they can encounter Grug the Cunning himself. He is exceptionally smart and will send his strongest remaining servants to attack the interlopers before joining the fray himself. If they are facing defeat, he and his bodyguard will retreat to the dungeon level, making a stand in the Great Cavern, which is detailed later on. Grug knows nothing of the history of the temple or anything else to do with it. He's only interested in food, fun and treasure. It details the furniture and the treasure the party can find here too. Also on this level is a library full of mouldering leather books that is home to some ogres. There is the Great Room, which is home to some direwolves, Grug's pets, and this has some treasure in it, which includes a cursed sword and a fair amount of coinage and jewellery. There are other rooms that contain ogres, gnolls and Norkers, and almost all of them are described as having a strange unnerving blend of stone, shapes and colours. It gives details on a fairly abandoned altar area, vestry and sanctum, that does contain brown mould, and there is a large antechamber that contains a giant troll that should give players a particularly nasty fight as well as attracting trolls from a nearby area. There are further areas that look like they were formerly bed chambers that Norkers occupy, and there is a passageway of black stone lined with 9 doors which lead to cells where lesser priests once lived, but that are now occupied by Norkers, ogres, and a mountain dwarf thief who caught breaking into the temple. He gives his name as Teldrol Storis, and will not make an agreement with the party that prevents him from stealing any loot, though he is chained up. It details a cloth-draped room that is home to a Norker witch doctor and guards, and it gives some tactics that he will use. He has a particular hatred of mountain dwarves and some dwarf-themed loot that he has taken as trophies from slain enemies, including a suit of dwarf-sized elven chainmail. There are further encounters with ogres, gnolls and a huge spider, with varying treasures available, and then we move to the dungeon level. It goes into great detail on the finish of the chambers, including the colours, types of stone and measurements, and it's quite informative. The first thing we encounter is a large chamber with 4 10-foot tall stone figures. One is black and is man-shaped, wearing strange armour with fluted, runnelled and winged plates. It holds a wavy-edged sword and wears a helm with no face openings. The second is a green idol that is swathed in a flowing gown from neck to feet, with the sleeves covering the hands and a high collar that runs cheek to cheek. It wears a mask that appears like an old man, a tight cap covers the top and it leans on a staff. The third is a red idol that is depicted in high boots and hose and garments that seem almost foreign in design. The head is covered by a long hood and it has an axe-like weapon. The fourth is blue and robed in many pleated garments covered in sigils. A broad cowl covers the head and the face is hidden in shadows. The hands are hidden by the robe and has a strange scepter-like device. If the horn is blown here, all 4 figures vanish and a 12-foot tall, vaguely human-shaped figure draped in purple appears and booms, "What aspect of eternal Tharizdun would you see?" The first mention we have of the chained god. The figure gives various responses to what the players say, if indeed they say anything, with some light in-game effects, and then it eventually vanishes. This is all an elaborate, unusually powerful permanent programmed illusion. As we move on through the level, there are various signs of previous inhabitation, as well as a couple of boggarts to trouble the party with their confusion ability, and also a mate of Perivotiogs and a stun jelly. They can eventually find an oval pool which has the pre-warned of Grell floating high above the entrance to the chamber, and there is even a torture chamber which has the dreaded ear seekers on the cell doors here should the party listen at them. It then moves to the crypt. This has a pretty powerful bulldog-faced and winged guardian demon here that protects the vaults and the treasures within, of which there is quite a lot of. Eventually the players should find the body of the last high priest of the temple, known as Wongas, who in his anger and rage has been reanimated as a coffer corpse. There's a strange shrine here and a fight with 2 caryatid columns, and eventually we find the vast cavern where Grug will have fled to in order to make his last stand. The party can fight some measles, and eventually they should come to a tunnel that after several hundred yards emerges to a mountain meadow that will take them back to where they came from. The next bit is the Undertemple. This is accessed by a shaft mentioned earlier and leads to a small crossroads with 3 rooms leading from it. As they enter the small central chamber, there's a strange iron gonging noise and the walls seem to turn purple and waver when a voice speaks, "Look above you to know your fate." If they look up, the ceiling seems to be transparent and swimming in a universe of violet hue or some glowing black runes, which they can read. The first says, "Those whom I find unfit I place on my left." The second, "Those who succeed I place on my right." And the third, "The chosen may come before me." Then everything changes back to normal again. The trapezoidal chamber has poor light that seems to contain suits of armour and archaic shields hanging on the walls. There is a shadow demon here who will try to magic jar an opponent in order to leave this place. The treasure here is a wand of light. The octagonal chamber has symbols on the walls, and sounding the horn here causes the floor to brighten and turn frigid cold, which will be painful for the characters unless they are wearing the robes they found earlier. A black pillar rises here, and the players need to light the incense they found earlier, and they will be able to pass-wall through the stone wall, through an archway and down to the black cyst. The hexagonal chamber has 5 strange formations in it that resemble small shiny black trees, with fruits of different colours relating to the game classes. If a player picks the correct fruit for their class, it will shatter, and will need to pass a saving throw that will either turn them to black ash, forever dead, or gain them a stat point relevant to their class. If they try again, they have to make the same saving throw or lose 2 stat points, and a third attempt will kill them automatically. The purple tree is the only one that anybody can pick from. Finally, we move on to the crux of the scenario, the black cyst. Spiralling purple steps formed by a column of grey smoke, lilac light and jet black has opened an entrance to somewhere far below the earth, or maybe somewhere else. The steps seem endless, but eventually they give way to those of black stone. The first room is a 20-foot across circular one. The walls, ceiling and floor are needle sharp, and the place is incredibly cold, wounding those not protected by robes. Likewise, torches cannot be held by hand, and the heat of the burning cones, should they light them, will help to keep them alive. The second room contains a cyst. It's 40 foot in diameter that light hardly penetrates. In the centre of the room there is a shape so black that it is almost lightless. There is a stone block, and on it rests a shape in a black haze that is so black it hurts to look at it. It occasionally ripples and seems to stir. Beyond the block are 2 great metal cressets. Examining them reveals that each is meant to hold 3 of the iron torches. The horn needs to be sounded, and the place will tremble and a secret door will open. Within the secret room there are 2 large chests made of black metal covered in glyphs. They are seamless and can only be opened by saying Tharizdun. There is some treasure here: a long tube of black metal, a small box of the same metal, and a bag of metallic black cloth. These items are freezing to the touch and can only be handled with the cloth of the robes. The chests are covered in no less than 60 poison needle traps that activate when they detect body heat, and inside the box is 333 gems of Tharizdun of varying value, and the long tube of black metal contains a wand of force. The second chest contains a stone coffer, of which one of the legs is a cube of force. The black metal cloth is tied fast. Inside is a book bound in black scaly hide that has black pages with silver glyphs inscribed on them. If anybody other than a priest of Tharizdun reads the glyphs, which requires a read magic, they will understand that the book is called Lament for Lost Tharizdun, and then it does them damage. It is advised that the use of this tome is for some later revelation, and they can sell it for around 33,000 gold. After this, we have the game stats for the Anise and Boggarts, and the in-game effects for Wand of Force, which, I have to be honest, is akin to a lightsaber. The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun was not quite what I expected. There is no true resolution at the end, only something that resembles the frustration that the priests felt all those years earlier. The idea of the temple being populated by monsters that have taken up residence there under the protection of a mountain giant is not a bad one. However, I do feel it's a massive distraction to the qualities of the temple itself, as it's my thinking that having a creepy abandoned temple that is shunned by monsters and animals alike would have been a far more effective and memorable experience than the one given here. I appreciate that this is all hindsight bathed in the light of modern gaming thinking 37 years after the event, and when Gary Gygax wrote this he was trying to do something a bit new with the creepy otherworldness of Tharizdun and his worshippers, but the running battles the players have to endure to even explore the first level left me a bit cold, and when we get down to the nitty gritty of exploring the Undertemple and the Cyst, the adventure takes on an entirely different character that came across as really eerie and interesting to read, with the sparse, abandoned feeling it presents, finally setting the scene promised by the cover and the introduction. The other issue I have is that the players could very well never find the temple, as it's extremely well hidden. Additionally, the treasure throughout is very difficult to find at times, and the scenario seems bent on punishing the players for finding it, and the idea that you could potentially need 12 players to be able to succeed is what I know would most DMs break out into a cold sweat if they thought about it. Also, an actual drawing of the temple itself would have been nice, as it's implied that it's a ziggurat but kind of difficult to confirm based on the map. I believe that Tharizdun, the Chain God, was a huge missed opportunity for AD&D at the time of release, and still continues to be, as aside from his appearance here and playing bit parts in editions since, most notably in the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil for 3rd edition, he was only really addressed again in 4th edition, being known as the Elder Elemental Eye and the creator of the Abyss, though being confused by most as being one of the primordials rather than a full-blown god. I could see a 5th edition book based around a more modern reworking of this scenario, with something along the lines of the outcome being the freeing of this fantastically evil god from the Black Cyst, and then the players having to go on quests to figure out how to recapture Tharizdun again, being something really great if the time and effort was put into it. I think with a bit of work, this scenario could easily be converted to a later edition and improved vastly. And though in many ways it is of its time, it is fairly evocative, but in my eyes just a bit too hard and confused as to what the player set out to achieve. I give the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun a 6 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, I'll put some links below. Lastly, if you like what I produce here, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon. Bud out.